What's going on, guys? In today's guide, I'm going to talk about how to use Beidou as a free-to-play or low-spending player, including your best weapons, artifacts, and an in-depth guide on each of her talents with testing I have done. Beidou can be more complicated than other characters to really master because her elemental skill is so unique, and she can be built in so many different ways. The information that I've found on her seems to be scattered throughout multiple videos and forum posts, so in this video, I'm going to try and present all of this information in one place. As we discuss each of Beidou's talents, I'll give you guys some gameplay tips that can help take her to the next level if you're new to Beidou or not very familiar with all her kit has to offer. Towards the end of this video, I'll test both the Physical Damage and Electro Damage Beidou build with the artifacts that I found best for each build type. I pulled Beidou in early game and have been testing her on and off since then, and she actually has replaced Diluc's spot in my main team just because I like her character so much. In my opinion, tier lists are kind of BS, and I think you should just play characters you want to play. If you want to form a team of waifus, form a team of waifus. The game isn't so hard to get through that it's not possible without a team of all 5-star characters. Beidou's character design is one of my favorite in the game, and her playstyle is not like any of the other characters in the game at the moment. Beidou is a tanky character who specializes in inflicting physical damage and electro damage and is capable of full counterattacks that can kill enemies in a single shot. Beidou shines, but can also be hard to understand because of her ability to be a successful damage dealer with two primary types of builds, electro damage and physical damage. When we talk about artifact sets for Beidou, we will discuss the difference between these two builds and why you might want to build Beidou with one of these builds over the other. On to Beidou's talents. Beidou's normal attack, Oceanborn, performs up to 5 consecutive strikes that deal a good amount of damage, generally increasing with each strike. Her charged attack will hit a total of 10 times with lower damage than her normal attack, and an 11th time with higher damage. Her charge attack will consume a decent amount of stamina and can be fairly hard to control throughout its movement, which does need to be considered. At talent level 5, Beidou's normal attack is doing 584% damage over 5.5 seconds, so about 106% per second, while her charged attack is doing 904% damage over 7 seconds, so about 129% per second. So her charge attack does do more damage over time. Beidou's charge attack is hitting approximately twice as fast as her normal attack, so if Beidou is built for crit, this attack could be really beneficial, even though it takes a hit on your stamina. Her elemental skill Tidecaller is arguably her best asset. This skill can easily one-shot any world boss like Ruin Guards and Ruin Hunters and can kill entire mobs within close proximity. Her kit is primarily built around this skill, and I will share why as we look at this skill more closely. Tidecaller is a countering technique that absorbs damage from enemies and deals back damage according to the number of times Beidou is hit. The first aspect of Tidecaller is the damage absorption. So the damage absorbed is going to be 21.6% of Beidou's max HP plus 2,392. Currently, I have Beidou sitting at 16,039 HP, so she can tank 5,856 damage with this skill. If her skill is still activated after taking this much damage, it will immediately release the skill and she'll start to lose HP. Because Tidecaller does scale off her HP, you could look for HP as a secondary artifact stat, but Beidou's kit is scaled towards higher HP, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Tidecaller can deal damage at 3 levels. There is a base damage of 182% of Beidou's attack, a first hit additional damage of 240%, and a third hit additional damage of 240%. This is dealt entirely as electro damage. In this clip, you can see the base attack Tidecaller damage of 2,741, a single hit damage of 6,348, and a 2-hit damage of 9,955. Now we'll start to get into why Beidou's kit is built around this attack. So her first passive talent is Retribution. For this passive, when counterattacking with Tidecaller at the precise moment, Beidou gets the maximum damage bonus. This means that she does not need to take 2 hits in order to unleash the maximum damage of Tidecaller, as we can see in this clip. There are 3 ways to perfect counter. The first is to press E the moment you are hit, or within about 0.2 seconds. The second is to release E the moment you are hit. And the third is to release E while standing on fire. Because of this third one, it's useful to have a pyro member on your team that can set grass on fire around Beidou when you're clearing mobs or other enemies. Beidou can also blow up exploding barrels with Tidecaller and not take any damage in the process, as she performs a perfect counter. Now the second reason Beidou's kit is built around Tidecaller. So her second passive talent is called Lightning Storm, and with Lightning Storm, for 10 seconds after Beidou does a perfect counter, her normal attack and her charge attacks will do 15% more damage, and her attack speed is increased by 15%. In this clip, you can see a normal charged attack on the top, and a charged attack on the bottom performed after a perfect counter that is performed at a higher speed and will also do more damage. Beidou's Elemental Burst Stormbreaker is going to put an Electro buff on all of your attacks. Not only does this deal Electro damage to the enemy being attacked, it will create a lightning arc that can jump between enemies every 1 second. When activating her ultimate, you will also deal Electro damage to enemies within a small AoE. Her ultimate will also increase her tolerance to interruption by enemy attacks and reduce damage taken. Beidou's normal attack will not be converted to Electro damage, so she will deal both physical and Electro damage while attacking. Beidou can also pass her ultimate onto others when she switches off the field. Therefore, as she is used in a more of a supporting role, someone with a higher DPS can be swapped in to deal Electro damage with higher physical damage. This Electro damage even works with bow users, so you can swap to someone like Diona, who can proc cryo reactions to perform superconduct with her charge attack or skill. Constellation 3 will upgrade this talent by 3 levels. While most of Beidou's passives will make her elemental skill Tidecaller more powerful, 4 of Beidou's constellations are going to increase Stormbreaker, which adds to her viability as an Electro DPS or Electro support. Because Beidou's rate up banner just ended, I have a Constellation 3 Beidou without spending any money getting it. Constellation 1 is going to add a shield that will absorb 15% of Beidou's HP and absorb Electro damage 250% more effectively when Stormbreaker is used. Constellation 2 is going to allow the lightning arc to jump to an additional target. Constellation 5 will allow 3 additional levels of this skill, and Constellation 6 will decrease electro resistance of surrounding enemies by 15%. The only other constellation not discussed that is also great for the Electro Beidou build is C4, which causes Beidou's normal attack to deal 20% additional electro damage after getting hit for 10 seconds. As a free-to-play player, it is pretty difficult to get Constellation 6, but all these constellations do increase her damage as an Electro DPS and should be considered in the way you end up building her. Alright, moving on to weapons that I would recommend for Beidou. If you plan to use Beidou as a main DPS, hands down the best option for free-to-play players for either a physical damage or Electro damage main DPS build is the prototype Amunis. This weapon has an attack percent, secondary stat, and a 50% chance to deal 240% attack damage in an AoE with normal and charged attacks. For low spending players, the Battle Pass weapon, Serpent's Spine, secondary crit rate stat is great for her DPS role, but this is a riskier weapon to use than the others listed, as she will take more damage, and you may not always see the benefit of this weapon as you take hits. The Blackcliff Slasher or Royal Greatsword from the Starglitter exchange are great options as well, as these options will offer an increase in crit damage or crit rate, but I wouldn't recommend spending Starglitter with the free prototype Amunis available. If you plan to use Beidou as purely a support character, the Sacrificial Greatsword can be good for a pure Electro build or a support build due to the energy recharge substat and chance to end the cooldown of the elemental skill. This means both her skill and burst can be used with much greater frequency. The Favonius Greatsword has similar stats, but in my opinion can only compete if you build Beidou with decent crit stats, which you should not do if she's a support character. The 5-star Wolf's Gravestone is her best in-slot weapon, with the 5-star Skyward Pride being a great option for an Electro DPS build due to the energy recharge substat and high base attack. However, I don't recommend spending your money on the weapons banners as they're kind of a trap. Now moving on to Beidou's artifacts. There are a number of artifact options that work well for Beidou. These are just my opinions and are not the only artifact sets that can be used, but the main DPS artifact sets are the ones I have tested and found work well for Beidou. If you are building Beidou as a main DPS physical damage dealer, the sets that I would recommend are either 2-piece Gladiator with 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry or 2-piece Gladiator with 2-piece Berserker. The 2-piece Gladiator set will give Beidou an 18% attack boost. This set can be swapped with Braveheart or Sojourner for the same set bonus, but the later two sets are not offered as 5-star artifacts and should be swapped in late game. The 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry set will add a 25% physical damage boost and is arguably the preferred set for the physical damage build, as physical damage scales better than attack percent from a 4-piece Gladiator set. The 2-piece Berserker set will add a 12% crit rate boost and should really only be used if you can build Beidou with high crit rate and high crit damage, using good secondary artifact stats or weapon stats. If you're building Beidou as a main DPS Electro Damage dealer, the set I would recommend is the 2-piece Gladiator with 2-piece Thundering Fury. As previously mentioned, the 2-piece Gladiator set can be swapped with the Braveheart or Sojourner set. The 2-piece Thundering Fury set will give a 15% Electro Damage bonus. Beidou's kit gives her increased Electro Damage percent with leveling up to 24% total. With the Thundering Fury set alone, Beidou will gain 39% Electro Damage bonus. The artifact main stats that I would recommend are HP, attack percent, either Electro Damage or Physical Damage depending on the build, and crit damage or attack percent if your crit rate is not high enough to justify the additional crit damage. For the main DPS build, the artifact substats that I would recommend are attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage. I was able to swap out my 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry set for a 2-piece Thundering Fury set so that we could test the difference between these physical and Electro Beidou builds. These artifacts are not perfectly interchangeable as they do not have the exact same substats, but none of them rolled heavily into attack, so the results should not be too skewed. That's just how RNG games go. None of the artifact main stats have changed, except for on the Goblet, where we switched from Electro Damage to Physical Damage. Otherwise, we have HP, attack percent, either electro or physical damage, and attack percent. With the Thundering Fury 2-piece build and Electro Damage Goblet, performing Tidecaller with the base damage yields 2,798. The maximum damage bonus was 10,161, and the crit damage was 17,531. For her auto attacks, we see approximately 280, 280, 350, 350, and 450 damage for the sequence of attacks. With the Bloodstained Chivalry 2-piece build and Physical Damage Goblet, performing Tidecaller with the base damage yields 1,846, which is 952 less than the Electro build. The maximum damage bonus was 6,705, which is 3,456 less than the Electro Damage build. For her auto attacks, we see approximately 460, 460, 570, 570, and 730 damage for the sequence of attacks, with each attack being around 200 higher than the Electro Damage build. Both of these builds are really good, and the choice depends on your playstyle and the other characters that you have on your team. I like doing huge damage with Tidecaller and will be sticking with the Electro build for a bit. However, this build does suffer more when fighting enemies that are resistant to Electro damage. I don't think you can go wrong with either build. If you do go Electro damage, I would just make sure someone else on your team can deal elemental damage or physical damage to deal with Electro enemies. The Physical Damage build will allow a lot of hack and slash damage, but at a large cost to Tidecaller. If you're looking at Beidou as a support character only, you can still use the Electro DPS artifacts. However, due to the energy cost of her burst, which will be her strongest support element, you may want to consider an artifact set with an energy recharge set bonus, such as the Exile set. The 2-piece Exile set could be run in conjunction with the 2-piece Thundering Fury set for additional Electro damage, or 2-piece Noblesse Oblige set for additional burst damage. Another interesting artifact set for support Beidou could be the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set. This will not only increase her elemental burst damage by 20%, but also increase party members' attack by 20%, which means you could activate her burst and switch to your main DPS for 20% additional Electro damage, plus 20% additional damage from your main DPS. There are definitely other options for artifacts, but these are just some that I would recommend. If you guys know of anything better, please let me know down in the comments. As a support, her artifact choice is more flexible depending upon your needs. Beidou has slowly become my favorite character to play and will likely not be replaced as a main DPS until Ganyu or Ayaka are introduced into the game and take over that role. I hope you guys found this video helpful and informative. If you guys did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I will catch you guys for the next video. Peace.